Okay, the recording happened faster than I expected. Technology. Start 8 seconds early. Welcome, everybody. If you're just arriving, welcome to our 199th Wedding Online Sports Economics Seminar. It is great to have my son Franceschi again. He's presented before in the series, and good to have you back, Max. I'm looking forward to your talk. A quick couple of things before Max kicks off. Obviously, first of all, we are hosted by the University of Reading, and we're sponsored by the Sports Economics Review. And if you do have a paper ready to go, thinking about where to submit, do consider the Sports Economics Review. The thing to say about the next few weeks is we have available slots if you do want to present in August. If you're not going anywhere nice for a holiday in August, there's August 1st, 8th and 15th are free if you do want to give a presentation. And there are lots of slots also free moving into the autumn as well. I'll start populating those fairly soon. That's all from me. So Max, please do take away your talk entitled The Effect of Interpersonal Competition on Employee Turnover and Employee Valuation. Evidence from professional football.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, can you confirm that you are seeing my screen? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, we can see it.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, then. So yes, once again, thank you, James, for organizing the roses, and thank you everybody for connecting today to witness my presentation on the effect of interpersonal competition on employee turnover and employee evaluation. I'm Maxime Franceschi. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Lausanne, and I deal with labor-related issues in football at the moment. So to start with, I'd like to introduce a small definition of interpersonal competition. So interpersonal competition exists when an individual desires and directs behavior towards attaining relative superiority over others on a particular dimension. And I like this definition because it indicates the fact that competition is a matter of relativity. So the idea that competition can only be assessed in a relative way is interesting because it stresses the zero-sum nature of competition. Also, the idea of dimension is covers multiple ideas, but in our case, it will be mostly the employee's performance, I would say. And also, we see that the desire and the behavior are basically the motives and the actions that individuals direct toward attaining some state of relative superiority. So with that being said, what does interpersonal competition covers in general? There are 4 conceptualizations of interpersonal competition. The first one is the perceived competitive climate. Researchers in that field usually take the point of view of the employees and see how the environment is characterized in terms of competitiveness. What is the mindset of workplace, for example? The dyadic framework is oriented towards considering one-to-one relations and seeing how these relations impact, for example, the performance of workers. Trade competitiveness is related to the individual and their preferences towards competition. Do person prefer competition and competitive environments or not, this kind of issues. And the last one, structural competition, it relates to the structure and, for example, the structure of a team, the structure of an organization, and so on. So this last conceptualization, I would say, this last stream of research is the most studied one in economics. And in particular, it is rarely, it is rarely assessed the impact of structural competition on employee turnover and valuation. But the only, I would say, big theory we have, and that is analyzed considering its impact on the turnover, is the tournament theory from Lazare and Rosen. That suggests that winner-take-all structure and strong reward dispersion lead to higher turnover likelihood. So basically, when the pay the pay range is very diverse in a company, it seems that turnover is higher in this case. So, however, these analyses are only based on pay dispersion. So basically, as I said, for example, is your manager earning a lot more than you or not? So this relates to the price schemes. And however, it is not really, these analyses are not exactly related to the market structure as is. For example, we do not assess the idea of fixed workload or the idea that the rewards might be in limited supply and how this would impact the performance of workers. So based on that and based on the results from the literature on pay dispersion, my first hypothesis is that a stronger structural competition should lead to higher employee turnover. And in turn, in the idea of that tournament theory, if tournament losers tend to self-select out, if the first hypothesis is verified, it is likely that the remaining employees, the tournament winners, will become more valuable for their companies because they have been winning the tournament and they are keen to stay and so on. So a stronger structural competition should lead to higher employee valuation. And so to assess these two hypotheses, I work within the football context because it offers an inherent competitive structure. The number of tasks that have to be done on a weekly or yearly basis is limited. A team doesn't have an extensive possible production. Also, we can observe, the turnover and the valuation through the transfers and the transfer fees mechanism. Although this is only partially observable for the valuation, the transfer fees. We can assess the competition intensity. We have some data that can help us assess how competition is designed within teams. And finally, we know from previous research that within football teams, there are some winner-take-all dynamics, and there is a large price spreads between the players. So this research context is, in my opinion, perfect to assess these two questions. So whether an increased interpersonal competition leads to higher turnover and higher valuation. So in the next I would say half hour, I will dive into my methodology and present to you the data I have in hand and some results before finishing with the limitation and perspective. This is quite usual. So regarding the methods, the first thing I want to stress is that the price of players, as I said previously, is observable, but only in some situations. So basically, the prices of players, the transfer fees are only observable for players that are actually transferred. So there is a potential for selection bias if the players that are transferred for a fee and the players that are not do not share the same characteristics. And it is proven, in fact, that being transferred and that the fee is disclosed is not a random. Okay, so we know from previous research that this is the case, and so that we should actually we should take that into account. However, most of the literature on the determinants of transfer fees are actually still based on ordinary least squares. In my literature review, I've read, I would say, 22 studies, and 16 of them use plain OLS regressions. But in my current work, I will use Heckman's two-step procedure. So to detail a bit how it works, in Heckman two-step procedure, there is a latent variable. So this is in our case, the fee, but this fee is only observable for players that are actually transferred. So this is not directly observable, but this is what we want to know in the end. And this is also the case we have for the transfer. We have a latent variable, so that depends on multiple characteristics of the player, of the team, and so on. I will detail that later. But this latent variable of transfers in fact takes value 0 or 1 depending on whether the player is transferred or not. And the transfer fee is only observable when the transfer takes place. So to summarize, we will have two equations. The first one is the selection equation. So the dependent variable is a transfer for a fee occurring. So basically, it's a binary variable, and I will use a probit model. And the second equation is the outcome equation with the fee, the valuation of the player, the value of the player. So to stress two elements in these equations, the first thing I want to highlight is the exclusion restriction. So this is a mandatory element that we have to have in the selection equation, and that is not in the outcome equation, so that the model works. So basically, we have to have at least one explanatory variable that is a good predictor of the selection of the transfer, but that is not included in the fee equation. The second element is the inverse Miller's ratio. So this element is the element through which the selection bias will be taken into account in the transfer fee equation. So basically, as you can see, this is the only element in the outcome equation with a t index. So meaning showing that the role of the probability of being transferred, the impact of it on the actual fee is taken into account via this inverse Miller's ratio. So the second thing I want to detail about Ekman two-step procedure is the computation of marginal effects, because most of the time those marginal effects are not computed completely, exhaustively, or are sometimes misinterpreted. We cannot interpret the marginal effect of the second equation, of the outcome equation, as a plain OLS model. So we have to take into account different effects. So in the first step of the procedure, we have a probit model, and here the marginal effects on the probability of transfer are exactly the same as in any other probit model. I mean, this is a marginal effect at sample means. Okay, so I will not detail other kind of marginal effects, but I will compute marginal effects at sample means. So in the second step, however, the marginal effect on the transfer fee, it should account first for the conditional marginal effect on the transfer fee for players that are transferred. So basically, this effect is computed and is valid, I would say, only on the players that are actually transferred. So this is basically the effect that we can derive from the second step. But however, there is also an effect associated with the probability of transfer. So basically, if you don't have the same probability of being transferred, the impact on the outcome variable is also changed. So in our case, since the dependent variable is log transformed, we use the marginal effect detailed in Hoffman and Kazoof. And those are actually semi-elasticities because, as I said, the dependent variable is log transformed. So basically, if we look at the marginal effect of a variable that is used in both equations, so the first hyphen, the first part of it, the E1, this is the conditional marginal effect on the logarithm of the transfer fee. And E2 is the partial effect on the transfer fee that goes through a change in the transfer probability. If a variable is only used in one or the other of the equations, the marginal effects can be reduced to more simple form. I will not detail the marginal effects for binary variable, but it follows the same principle. So in terms of data, first of all, I would like to present which variables I used to assess interpersonal competition in this research, and which effects I expect from this design. So I have 6 variables. So the number of arrivals in the team over the season, the number of departures in the team over the season, the share of injured players in the team, the share of players on loan in the team. So this is at the end of the season, and the share of players with the same position in the team at the end of the season once again, and also overall the number of players in the team. So basically, my hypothesis is that the number of arrival, the share of players with the same position, and the players in team are positively representing competition. So the higher these variables, the higher the competition intensity. And regarding departure, the number of the share of injured players in the team and the share of players on loan, when they increase, this means that the intensity of the competition is decreasing. I would like just to stress maybe the share of players on loan. I say that it is decreasing the intensity of competition because at the end of the season, if you have a lot of players on loan, this means that some of them will be arriving at the end of their loans a few days after. So in this case, that would leave some space, I would say, for you in the team, and then you have from my hypothesis, you have less chance of being transferred over the transfer window. So when the competition intensity increases, I expect, as I said, the transfer probability to be increased. However, I expect the conditional effect, so the effect on the transfer fee itself, not the valuation as a whole, but the transfer fee itself, for players that are transferred, to be decreased. Because in that case, for example, if we take the number of arrivals in the team, we could hypothesize that the player is might be willing to go, and that probably the selling team will be accepting a lower fee than if it doesn't have any replacement or any or if it doesn't have a sufficient number of players in the team. So those are my 6 core variables, I would say, and I've used a lot of other variables that are quite common in the literature on transfer fees, but I will stress some of them that are either not researched a lot so far, or that I would like to stress some ideas. So I split them in 7 categories. So regarding the current club characteristics, I've included the club median fee, so the current club median fee over the last three years, and also included the team ranking outcome. So basically, which competition will the club take part in the next season? Will it be in the same division? Will it go down, or will it go to European competition? In terms of players' characteristics, I've included some rarely assessed or never assessed variables, such as the fact of having a second nationality, and some variables about injuries, so the fact of being injured at the end of the season, or the days injured over the season. Regarding performance variable, I've included quite common variables, but I also included an average rating that is computed based on data provided by Footmarketer, which is a French media outlet that proposes its own rating of players. I have no time here to detail it, but I could if you are interested. And regarding labor, what I call labor-related variable, I included the contract length, the top 10 average outgoing fees by competition. So basically, is the team in which you play, the competition of the team in which you play, is it selling with high fees or not? And also top 50 average incoming fees to assess a bit of inflation, I would say. Also included, of course, a time variable for season. And as I mentioned previously, I included one exclusion restriction variable, which is the most recent arrival type. It could be a loan, a transfer fee, free transfer. So basically, this will be the variable that will only appear in the selection equation, so in the transfer, the turnover equation, and not in the outcome equation, the fee equation. In terms of data, I've used data from 2014-15 to 2021-2022. I also have data on 2022-2023, but I use them as a predictive test set. I will not detail the results of the predictive approach because this is not the focus of this presentation, but this was also something I wanted to dive in when working on this model. Also, I have to stress that I do not have 2019-2020 data, it's not a lack of access to data. It's an issue with conceptualizing data, because in my data set, I consider data at the end of the season. Basically, I define the end of the season after the last match of the team in the main competition. But the issue is that with the COVID season, some competition, some competition had a last game that occurred after the opening of the transfer window. So it was really difficult to find a way to include it. So I decided to basically to remove it because it was not feasible. And I want to stress that we see here the number of players included in the data set has increased after 2020. Maybe this is due to some access to data, to some reliability of data from the provider. But I think it's also due to, partly at least, due to increase in squad composition in the latest years after the COVID, maybe due to the increased number of substitution allowed per game or something like that. And this is the share of transferred player by competition and season, and we see that in the post-COVID season, the numbers are lower because the number of players are higher, and also maybe because we have witnessed a kind of slowing down after the COVID. So in terms of results, I will detail further the results on the probability of transfer, and then the results on the transfer fee. And I will dive a bit into the marginal effects that I've detailed, that I've mentioned previously. Excuse me. So in terms of probability of transfer, so basically the turnover. So what impact the turnover in football teams? In terms of interpersonal competition, the only significant variable here at 5% is the number of arrivals in the team. So the higher the number of arrivals in the team over the season, and the higher the probability that a player will be transferred for a fee. But apart from that, all other variables included in this dimension are non-significant. Also, what I see in this regression is that the sporting, I would say, field-related variables are almost all non-significant. The status of the current club, not the status, but the performances of the current club is not impacting the probability of transfer. The competition is almost not impacting, except from being a Ligue 1 player. I don't know how Ligue 1 should take that, but being in Ligue 1, Ligue 1 is a sign that you have more chance to be transferred at the end of the season. And regarding performance, only how do you say, the playing time in a way is positively impacting your probability of being transferred. And the decisiveness, I would say, the fact of being involved in goals and assists is impacting the probability of being transferred. So all of the variables, especially the rating, are not significant. And also, it's not the probability is not impacted based on the position. So I was a bit surprised by that, because we always say that the market dynamics are very different based on position, especially, for example, for goalkeeper. But none of the effects were found significant in this research. So, however, the variables that are significant are the ones related to off-the-pitch dynamics. So is the club a big club? For example, if the club have invested a lot in the recent years with the, as we can see with the club median fee, it is less likely that you will be transferred for a fee. And in terms of also of labor, of course, having a longer contract will decrease your probability of being transferred for a fee. And also we see some personal characteristics impact the probability of being transferred, such as having a second nationality. Having a second nationality increases the probability of being transferred, maybe due to the fact of having maybe a European passport, and another one can help in being transferable, I would say. And as usual, the age also, as expected, is impacting. You are more likely to be transferred if you are young. And finally, regarding probability of transfer, I stress the role of the most recent arrival type. So basically, did you arrive to the team as a loan or from a transfer, and so on. So being on loan is impacting your probability of transfer very much. So basically, when a player is on a loan, he is highly likely to be transferred for a fee in the following transfer window. Okay, so regarding the transfer fee, the first important thing is to highlight the fact that the selection bias is observed also on that sample. So this is basically the biggest sample so far in the literature that demonstrate the existence of selection bias. And it is interesting because in previous research from Carmichael and his co-authors, and Montero and his co-authors, they only focused on one competition. But in this case, I introduced data from Big Five competition, and the effect is observable if we consider the market as a whole. So this is an interesting result. So basically, the probability of being transferred is not homogeneously distributed among players. So in terms of interpersonal competition, in this case, on transfer fee in the outcome equation, only the number of departures in the team is significant. So if there are more departures in the team, you will be transferred, and if you are transferred, you will be transferred for a high fee. Then we can see also the club median fee as previous, as for the probability. The sign is opposite here. So the bigger spender sell the player higher. Okay, this is a proxy for the status of the club, basically. And it is the same also we can see with the UEFA team ranking. However, the sign here is negative because this is the lower the ranking, the better the club, basically. And the sign, the coefficient with the FIFA national team ranking is also significant. So being in a top ranked national team has also an impact on your transfer fee. Here also we see that for transfer fees this time, the field related variables really have an impact. First of all, the current club sporting performance are impacting. If your club qualifies to UCL, you will have a higher transfer fee, all has been equal. And if your team relegates, you will have a lower transfer fee. So basically, this links to the urgency or the need for the club to sell or to keep the players. Regarding other field-related variable, this time the competition of the player has a tremendous impact. If we look at the coefficient, they are huge compared to the other. And also, as previously, the playing time and the decisiveness have an impact on the transfer fee, but this time also the average rating. As usual, also the remaining contract length had an impact, and the age. But in this case, in the age, we can see that only the squared variable is significant, while in most of the literature both are significant. So I don't know really how to interpret that. Maybe that the slope is steeper or something like that. But if you have ideas, I'm willing to hear them. So in terms of marginal effect, and this is what I would like to stress also, because this is something I think I bring to the literature. So if we consider the variables that I introduced as interpersonal competition, we see that the marginal effect of the arrival in teams on the probability of being transferred. We see that one more arrival in a team increases the probability of being transferred by 0.116 percentage point. And we see also that even if the coefficient was not significant in the outcome variable, the unconditional semi-elasticity on the transfer fee is close to 1%. So basically, one more arrival in the team increases, I would say, the unconditional affect the unconditional valuation of the player by 1%. So the player is more likely to be transferred. So in a way, he is more valuable because he is more marketable in a way. Departure in team, we see here that the conditional semi-elasticity is close to 1. So this is also linked to the significance that we mentioned earlier. But this conditional effect, so basically this effect is only valid for players that are actually transferred. This effect, if we consider the whole sample, it is a bit lowered by the partial effect due to the effect on transfer probability. So basically, if I had to interpret this, I would say that more arrivals makes players more expendable in a way. And so more players will be sold, and then the unconditional effect on valuation increased because more players will be sold in the market. But in terms of departure, this time the effect is not exactly the same. The end result is the same. The unconditional effect is positive, but the dynamic is different because more departure means that remaining players are more valuable. If we consider the tournament theory, so basically the players that are still in the team are more valuable, and the price that should be paid is higher. And then the unconditional effect in the end is also positive. Also, this is the marginal effect of the exclusion restriction variable. So basically the variable that was only present in the first step equation. And we see that this, although this variable was only present in the first step equation, it had an impact on the final variable, the outcome variable, the transfer fee. We can see that the unconditional semi-elasticity is positive for all types it was really significant for the loan, for being on loan and being arrived with a transfer fee. And we see that being on loan increases the valuation of a player by 100%. It does not increase the transfer fee of a transferred player, but it increases the valuation as a kind of theoretical concept, taking into account both the probability of being transferred and the transfer fee if a player is transferred. Also, finally, regarding these marginal effects and what using conditional and unconditional marginal effect can help us understand, it is interesting to see that if we look at remaining contract length and the club median fee, which are two quite important variables, especially the remaining contract length in the literature, they are associated with higher transfer fee. So basically, if the remaining contract length is if the contract is longer, I would say rather, then the transfer fee for a transferred player will be increased. And same for the club median fee. If the club has spent a lot in the last 3 years, it is more like its player will have higher transfer fees. But at the same time, since these two variables are associated with lower probability of being transferred, this effect on the probability of being transferred kind of outweighed the effect on the transfer fee. So basically, in the end, the total effect of the remaining contract length and the club median fee is negative on the valuation of players, because the players that have higher remaining contract length, for example, they are less sellable, less marketable in a way, because they are less available, I would say. So in the end, the valuation as a theoretical construct is diminished. So to conclude, what this article brings to the conversation is, first, I show that selection bias is confirmed in the top 6 European leagues. We could argue that Eredivisie is in the top 6 of the leagues, but I consider these 6 leagues. So selection bias is confirmed on the biggest sample so far. And also we show that the number of arrivals and the number of departures have a positive impact on unconditional marginal effect of employee evaluation. So via two different dynamics, the number of arrival increases the probability of transfer, and therefore the valuation of the employees, because if you consider a team as a whole, the money that you could get will be increased because there are more players that will be transferred due to the increase in probability. And also the dynamic for departures is a bit different. This time it increases the price for the players that are actually transferred. Obviously, this research has some limitations. First, my hypotheses are only partially verified. I used 6 variables and only 2 of them are significant in only one of the 2 equations for each of them. So maybe I should look at other ideas, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. If you have ideas on how to input the interpersonal competition within this analysis. I only considered complete cases. In particular, I had some issue with data. The issue was mainly that I did not have remaining contract lengths for all the players. So I have a subset of all players in these 6 leagues, although it's quite a good sample. We have 10,000 players and about 1,200 transfers for these 6 leagues. But I still lacked some data on remaining contract length, which is an issue. And also, I introduced my article from the I would say the general economic theory discussing interpersonal competition. But in the end, the football setup is a very interesting one with very interesting characteristics that help me dive into these 2 hypotheses that I had. But however, this is not, in my opinion, this is not really transferable to other industries, or I would say traditional employee literature. So this opened some perspective, obviously. So I could distinguish between selection biases, because I did not mention it, but in my opinion, there are 2 biases. The first one is that not all players are transferred. I call that a structural selection. So this is what we can observe in football. And then there is an informational selection because some players are transferred for a fee, but we don't know the fee. So in the end here, I only used the fee from players that are transferred and for which the fee is disclosed or available. But in the end, there are 2 different biases, and it might be interesting to distinguish between the 2 of them to see I would say if we could work on more, for example, data availability. Is it an issue or not? This would be an interesting topic. As I said, I would like to work, maybe introduce some other measures of interpersonal competition, such as pay dispersion, although salary data can be a bit tricky to have and reliably. But I could also include, I could argue that the reward, the prize in a team is not only the pay, the salary, but also the playing time. So we could use the playing time as the main prize of the tournament within a team, to determine how the reward is dispersed between the participant, so basically between the players. So using some measures of playing time dispersion could maybe help me measure interpersonal competition. And obviously, I would like to broaden the analysis to include other leagues, but I'm limited right now by the availability of some data, as I've mentioned previously. So with that, I finished my presentation. I hope I was not too long. I think I'm quite on schedule, and I wanted to have some time to discuss with you if you had ideas to follow up on this idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. I'm giving you a team's round of applause. Thank you. That was a really interesting talk, and certainly within time, so plenty of time for questions and comments. The first hand that went up was from Steve. So go ahead, Steve.
Thank you very much, Maxence. I'm a lawyer, not an economist, so I can't help you with many of your methodological things. I'm interested in one of your findings that a higher that the team that there was some significance to whether a club needed to buy or sell players, and if they were being promoted or being demoted, and the perceived need of the club, and how that affect the transfer fee. And with Micro Econ 102, which is about all I know, it would suggest that in a competitive market, that shouldn't matter. And that is if a club can receive enough offers from a player. And so my first question is, do you think there's a competitive market? But assuming there's a competitive market, that for any given player, there's 4+ clubs who would be interested in paying a transfer fee to get the player's services. The 4 clubs are going to bid against each other. If the selling club absolutely has to sell the player for some reason, then there's 4 clubs willing to bid on the player. If the selling club is not desperate, it might sell the player for a good price, or it might keep the player. So it has the option of keeping the player. Now you have 5 options for the selling club. They can keep the player, or they can sell the player to A, B, C, or D. That should not affect the price, because once you're at a competitive level, adding additional potential options shouldn't change it. What you observe, so first I want to find out if you actually found empirically this to be true. This is commonly accepted wisdom in North America as well, that if a team has to trade a player, they're not going to get as much value than if they have an option. And I don't exactly understand why. So first question, does your data actually suggest that the need of a team to sell a player affects the transfer fee? And second, why do you think that is the case?
Okay, thank you, Steve, for your question. Well, first, so this relates to what I call the team ranking outcome. So basically, where you sit on the table, what will you do next year? And I said that it impacted the transfer fee because, for example, if you get relegated, other teams will know it and will probably adapt their proposal. So we have seen from the literature that the current club of a player is really important in his valuation. So basically, my hypothesis would be that if a club goes down, then other competitors know that basically this player is worth less, is perceived at least as worth having less worth. Even though I agree with you, if the intrinsic performance or quality of the player remains the same, it should not change. But also, this is maybe a matter of not only because it's the perception of other teams, but also it's a matter of strategic behavior by the team itself. Because if you go down, you will want to release some player because you will not have the payroll and so on. And also, if you go up or if you go to European competitions, especially the Champions League, you might want to buy better players. So you will probably maybe try to sell some players. So this could also impact it because you as a team will have a willingness to accept that will be different. So yeah, in my opinion, it's more. I agree with you with the basic expectation that we would have from, as you said, economics, microeconomics 102. But the thing is, probably it's a matter of strategic orientation and a willingness to accept that changes, because the as soon as you know that you will go to UCL or you will go down, your utility function will change. Okay, so then you don't have the same willingness to accept. In my opinion.
I understand the strategic change in a buyer who's making it to the Champions League and they are desperate to get more talent, so they might well pay more than they would otherwise. But I would encourage you to continue to think about this phenomena that you've identified, because to me, as a competition lawyer, my first notion is if there are 5 teams interested in buying a player from a team that is about to be relegated, and they all bid less, knowing that the team has to sell the player and they will, because they're being relegated. This suggests to me tacit collusion among the 5 teams. And one way of doing that is do social norms, this accepted wisdom that you get less when you have to sell a player, contribute to tacit collusion. And economic competition policy is based on the notion you got 5 relatively equal bidders, you're going to get a competitive result. It doesn't matter whether there's 5 or 15 or 50, it's going to be the competitive result. And this phenomena may suggest, and there's been work in other areas of industrial and organization economics to this effect, that there are certain areas where 5 bidders isn't enough because of this sort of social norm that people are doing. So anyway, I'd encourage you to consider that.
Yeah, I agree that the issue is probably related to the fact that we have a monopsony here. So it's not monopsony, but maybe oligopsony. So yeah, you have a very low demand, and then it's difficult maybe sometimes to sell, because if you consider that the selling team has a willingness to accept that diminishes because its utility function change after the result of the season. If you consider that the willingness to pay of other clubs should not change because the quality of the player is the same, then maybe the result is only where the final price will stand between the two is only a result of negotiation and maybe collusion. I don't know. But yeah, that would be something that could be interesting to look at. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Kenneth.
Yeah, thanks for the sharing your project. So I was wondering, and this would go away, or this would be controlled for in your league effects, but are there any league differences in roster size? Or are there like roster caps in general? I don't know so much about football, so this would be, I think, interesting. Also, then the pre-post COVID kind of rise in, I guess, overall players. Is this then kind of driven by one league, or is this all leagues? Because then if it's just 1 or 2 leagues that are driving this, and if I take the assumption that you make that this is a global market, then in essence you kind of have a control, right? If let's say, I don't know, Bundesliga didn't raise their roster limits, because I would assume that a bigger roster creates more competition, because as it stands right now, I'm having a really hard time with the interpersonal competition story, just because I guess competition is kind of an intrapersonal conflict, right? And it's highly individual, and people have different tastes and preferences for competition. So yeah, it's just really hard if everybody's lumped into one to try and tell this. So I don't know if you have any, if you know about at least maybe the roster size or something like this.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So regarding the roster size, are they different by leagues? I've looked at that, and it's not significantly different from what I can tell, but I must say I haven't tested it by pre and post COVID by league. So maybe I could look at that. Definitely.
I mean, you have almost I think if I remember the numbers correctly, almost 100% increase in overall roster size, or at least overall.
Yeah, in the number of players
Yeah.
included in the sample. Yeah,
And this is quite
I
bad.
don't know. I don't know if it's 100%, but yeah, the increase is quite steep. Yeah, so basically, in the first seasons, we start, for example, for Liga at 234 players, and I have exactly 471 in 2020-21. So yeah, basically it doubled between in 5 or 6 years. So maybe there is an issue here with the availability of data, but I think there is also this issue with bigger and bigger roster size. We have seen some clubs increasing their rosters. The main example might be Chelsea, for example, that has a lot of players unknown. So basically, the idea behind interpersonal competition story, as you said, was to see if your club, your club has 10 other forwards, are you more likely to leave or not, for example? So this was the main idea. But I should look into the data a bit more because in terms of the size of the roster size, and yeah, because probably there is an issue with the availability of data. Maybe after COVID, they also included some like end of the bench players that before that they did not include for whatever reason. This is Opta data, so I mean it's not random data that I handly picked, but maybe there is an issue with the way they collect data and maybe how they evolved after COVID. I can look into that.
Great, thanks, Kenneth. Stefan.
Hi, Max. It's an interesting subject, and one thing I would say is that in terms of this idea of interpersonal competition, I mean, one thing that sort of an empirical fact that always struck me over many years looking at the data is that once you control for wages, the success of a team is highly correlated with the inversely correlated with the number of players who play within a season. So if you look at if you look over 20, 30 years or so, teams that have relatively low turnover of players tend to do better. And I've never been quite sure what it is. I'm not sure whether that's luck because your good players don't get injured, or whether it's cohesion of some sort. I don't really have a fundamental explanation, but it seems to me that that's one of the points is once you've got a good team, the key thing is to stick with it and not change it. And so that might have some relationship to the thing you're discussing. But I had a couple of points that were sort of worrying me about this, or not worrying me, but I think things that you ought to sort of bring into the story as well, which is, and maybe you said this, I didn't catch it, but strikes me one of the key, again, stylized facts about football is that the people who decide who play are in and out of a job every 5 minutes, right? So the average I don't know what the average tenure of what we're down to now at the moment in the Premier League. It's months rather than years, right? And it's been like that for a long time. The people are actually charged with deciding which players to employ and which players to field. They themselves are in and out all of the time. And we know that when a new manager comes in, there's some players they like, some players they don't like. They want to bring their own players. So a large fraction of the turnover must have to do with changes in manager, which is not quite the same as the sort of interpersonal competition that you're talking about. And so I think you need to take that into account. And the second thing that I think you need to consider is essentially we're talking about a market. So there's supply, and essentially you've talked about supply, but then there must also be demand. And so the demand for players out there, that must depend on the state of the other teams, right? So when other teams are, so for example, if you had a player in 2022 or 2023 or 2024 who you were and you that was good and you wanted to make some money, you wanted to talk to Chelsea because they were buying anything and anybody, right? I mean, what Chelsea went just crazy in 2 seasons. I was looking at the financial data the other day, and it's just bizarre. They spent 1.7 billion in the pounds, so that's no dollars, 1.7 billion dollars in the transfer market in 2 seasons, according to their financial statements. That's just insane. But that clearly, any of the other clubs in your sample, they would have been looking at this and say, "Whoa, we got a bunch of idiots here who will pay anything. Let's sell now. You'll never get an opportunity like this. Go for it." So I think that must also play a role. So I just think these are sort of things you need to consider as part of your overall analysis.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure how I could answer because there's more comments, but thank you for that. Maybe on the last element, one point I didn't say is that at the very beginning of the analysis, my idea was also a predictive approach. And this is why I did not include the demand side, because otherwise you cannot kind of predict if you know which club bought the player. So this is the first thing, but I definitely have to get rid of that to be able to include some demand side elements. And I note also the fact that the changes in the number of players, the number of arrival and departure might be due to just changes in staff. Although I did not mention it, but I included the number of coach changes over the season. So maybe that could kind of control for that. Maybe I could have an interaction between them to see. That might be interesting. I don't know. Thank you in any case.
Thanks, Stefan. Alex is next.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I have a few comments. Some of them relate to what Ken and Stefan said. So over the years, maybe there was some kind of change in different transfer types. Like in some years, in more recent years, there were, I don't know what just Stefan said, Chelsea, maybe they used different type of loans than it was like 10 years ago. And I'm wondering whether this could somehow affect your results, because if I'm not mistaken, I didn't see you control for years or something like that. Am I wrong?
No, I included season, yeah.
Season, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I skipped it a bit too fast.
Yeah, and what Ken said, do your results maybe differ between the leagues? And would be interesting to see the analysis per league and not the pooled analysis, because maybe there's some kind of heterogeneity that goes on, and one league drives the entire thing here.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, this was also something I was willing to test, trying to split between the leagues and focusing on seeing if the role of what I call at least interpersonal competition is it different league by league, but I did not have any kind of hypothesis or.
I'll tell you why I'm saying this, because a few weeks ago we had another presentation here about Italian league, I think. Oh, there were like some teams that had so many transfers, and some teams had really not so many transfers. So Oh, I don't know. This is what I remember, so that's why I'm asking. Maybe in Italy it differs than in Germany. So
Okay, I should try in any case.
yeah,
It's not a high cost.
yeah, for sure. And the last one, I think in conclusion, you had a kind of causal language there, then that more transfers lead to higher fees of the players that leave the club. This was one of your points there in conclusion. That more that am I wrong?
Yeah. So basically, if there are more departures, that's
Yeah.
it in your team.
No,
Then
no,
you-
it's more transfers leads to higher incoming fees. That's what you said there.
More transfers.
I think it was the second point in conclusion. You can just check
Maybe
it.
I can share again. Yeah. Do you see it?
Let's see. The number of more arrivals increase the probability of transfer, more departures increase the transfer fee of transferred players.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, if you have my interpretation is that if you have more departures in your team, then the remaining players, basically the winners of the contests within your team, are more valuable. So if you end up selling them for whatever reason, it's because we have proposed a very high fee that was difficult to refuse. So
no, but you also say more arrivals increase the probability of transfer, and I'm wondering how do you know? Maybe maybe if you have one big transfer, you will just have more money to have more arrivals. No, you sell a very expensive player, and now you'll have more.
Okay. Maybe I see. I did not go through that. Sorry for that. I could have been more precise in my explanation. But in terms of timing, my dependent variable is being transferred after the end of the season and September, the beginning of September. And my independent variables are all variables the season before. So the number of departures is up to the end of the season, so it cannot be impacted, or the number of arrival cannot be impacted by the fact that you have sold someone over the summer transfer window. I'm not sure I'm getting your comment. I hope it answers, but let me know if it's not clear.
No, that's fine. We just don't know with these transfers when the teams know that they sell the players. Well, maybe I sell a player in the summer, but I already know about it like several months before, and therefore this can affect my decision to buy, to sell, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe. So kind of. I do say this in English. Yeah, foreseeing in a way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Reade.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Interesting as always. But I would like to hear your opinion about the effect of age, because interpersonal competition may be very differently relevant at different age categories. So, for instance, Winston Bogarde was a player who played for Chelsea, I think, by showing up at every training session of the second team. And he didn't do anything besides that, but he got paid handsomely. And he didn't mind too much because he was kind of older player at that moment. Arjen Robben was transferred from FC Groningen to PSV and promptly sent back on loan for 1 year to be a 17-year-old player and practice enough. So can you somehow include that accumulation of human capital in your framework. And the second remark that I have is, this may be specific to the situation in the Netherlands, but I don't know. If Ajax sells a big player to these English teams or Spanish teams, then they start buying players in the Netherlands. So it all trickles down, and that creates a type of dependence between observations that I didn't see in your analysis. I wouldn't know how to incorporate such a dependence, but yeah.
Yes, thank you. For the first part, yes, the age, the role of interpersonal competition could be different by age group. Yeah, that's a good idea. I should look into that. Maybe having different regression by age group or something. Yeah, that's a good idea. I have nothing specific to answer to that. It's just a good idea. Thank you. And regarding the idea that Ajax, for example, when they sell a big player, there are some trickle down effect. I could include some variables like has the club sold for more than, I don't know, 5 or 50 million last year, or have they sold a player that is worth more than X million? So I could have this kind of binary variables to spot some specific trickle down effect. That could be an interesting approach too. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Reade. Just to say before I hand over to Steve that the paper that Alex was referring to was, I think it was one by Bernd Frick, and I can't remember if it was in a Roses series, but he certainly presented it at a few different conferences. That you might, I think, at Duisburg, Maxence.
Yeah. But I didn't get the paper focus exactly, but I'd see that maybe with you or.
Yeah, I can share the title. Steve.
Thanks.
Thanks again. Another aspect that I thought was really interesting, and it may factor into the promotion to the Champions League, but if we're not assuming that a club is moving around, getting relegated, promoted, or making the Champions League, they're just a good team. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm a consumer of economics, but it seems to me that all things being equal, players are more valuable to inferior teams because the good teams already have the player, so the marginal benefit of the player to a good team might be less. Now, we're talking about teams that have similar marginal revenue functions. And there's a famous example in the United States of this where the New York Yankees won a World Series and their closing star relief pitcher then became a free agent and eventually went to another team. And the Yankees were the lowest bidder for this player because they had ready to go on their roster a younger player who turned out to be a Hall of Fame pitcher. So I wonder if that's another variable to consider here that maybe counters the winner, and that is that, again, assuming equal teams, that if Paris Saint-Germain has two great strikers and Bayern really needs a striker, then that player is going to be more valuable to Bayern than the player is to Paris Saint-Germain, and that will affect the transfer fee as well. So I just throw that out as something for you to continue to look at.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, indeed. I think it relates once again to the willingness to accept or to pay. If you really need a forward and you are looking for one, then your willingness to pay will be higher. And on the contrary, if you have other options, you are willing to maybe to sell them. Yeah, I agree with that. the subjective value changes depending on your roster. But however, I don't know if lower team value player higher than higher team.
Well, a lower team, in theory, depending on the marginal revenue, a lower team would value the player more than the higher team, because the real question for each club is what is the marginal benefit to the club of the player.
Yeah,
So
I
you
agree.
can imagine to use the Premier League today and roughly equal clubs, you can imagine that if there is a player on Chelsea who's a good player on Chelsea, they had a good year this year. Tottenham had a terrible year this year. That same player might create more wins for Tottenham than they would for Chelsea because of the current state of their rosters, and therefore be more valuable to Tottenham.
Yeah. Okay, if you consider lower and higher team like this, I do understand, because they have basically the same productive structure. They are both equally able to generate revenues with a good player. It's not like a third or second division team that doesn't have the productive structure. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Kenneth.
Yeah, I have two quick questions. I guess the first one is so if you do then the kind of league kind of analyses, in theory, then you're also able to observe, given your second nationality, you have like a primary nationality, so you can observe like player nationality essentially, and control for this.
Okay, so you mean if I make different regression by league, I can also control for nationality, like being local, for example.
Yeah. So if you're a French player playing in a German league, then is this something that's in your data currently?
Yeah, I have the nationalities, and I created this because I did not want to have like fixed effect for nationality. It was not really meaningful, but I included this having two nationalities, so dual nationality, and also being local. So like if you're French in the French team, in the French division, it's kind of, but I could include other interactions.
Right. Okay. Then second question is, I don't know, it's not necessarily, it doesn't seem like your primary research question, but, and maybe I also missed it when you were talking about the other observable variables, but is there anything like, can you make any normative statements or even pose any normative questions given your data? For example, I guess if, teams then are transferring or have more transfers, or are buying more players or loaning more players, what impact does this have? Is this good or bad in terms of like competition?
In terms of competition between teams, I don't know, but we could certainly argue that when clubs recruit new players, they impose a kind of competitive climate to their players. And to what extent is this a good thing for the players? I don't know. But I would say that this is dealt with in every club at its level, because they want to maximize win or profit, whatever.
Right.
So they deal with that in a way. They will make it efficient. So in terms of competition wise, I'm thinking, but now I'm seeing.
My second question, when I hear your first question, is then, I mean, of course, answering the first question is hard enough, but then it's kind of like, well, then does this actually make the firm better? Like do loads of transfers or kind of sitting on your laurels or kind of developing the assets that you do have, is which is better? How do kind of firms then come out of such strategies?
Okay. I was more thinking about regulations than like management practices, but yeah, definitely could be interesting to look at that. Well, yeah, I don't know exactly how I could do that, but it would relate to like the team performance, and then it's suddenly another question. It's another dependent variable and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just curious.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. If I understand Ken's first point about nationality, I can't remember if you've got nationality in your model, Max, but there's a paper by a colleague of mine, Adrian Bell, Chris Brooks, that whether English players are overvalued, which is in Applied Economics in 2023. And I guess there's all been, maybe if this was covered as well, I mean, this seems to be an interesting question on whether in terms of your first question about mobility, I think you had a number of foreign players in the squad, didn't you, or foreign transfers? But I imagine that migrant players might be more or less mobile than native players. I don't know. Either way, I guess how much you consider the foreign dimension when you were looking at it.
Yeah, I could dive a bit more into this. The nationality issue would be a interesting topic. Maybe, as I said, maybe it's also related to whether you have I don't know, let's say a UK passport because
Or European passport, yeah.
or a European passport, because then maybe the club, all else being equal, you would want someone that you would not have to do a lot of administrative stuff to get in. So yeah, I guess it's impactful, but is that like very marginal, or is it something that is important in the decision making of clubs? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've taken up pretty much the entire time, so thank you, Max. Really good talk, provoking lots of really interesting discussion. It's a really interesting paper that you've got, and I wish you all the best as you develop that further.
Thank you.
We won't be meeting next week here. Some of us who are fortunate enough to be in Zurich will be at the second workshop on sports economics and natural experiments, organised by Raphael Flepp and Carl Singleton. We will then be back on the 4th of July, and we'll even have an American presenter from the US on the 4th of July. Dave Berry is going to present what was Caitlin Clark worth, exploitation, reparations, and the economics of college basketball. So see you all on the 4th of July.
Thank you.
Thanks, Max.
Cheers. Thank you.